Proverbs 18:24. A man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. So let's remember the Proverbs are written to the sons of the king. These are collections of wisdom sayings, often passed from father to son. And in fact, the opening Proverbs are a dialogue from a father to a son, from a king to a prince. And so let's remember this is the context in which it is written, and yet also realize that we are able to abstract the meaning to apply to everyone. And we could say something like, a person of many companions may come close to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother or a sibling. What kind of friend is this, and what does it mean to be a person of many companions may come to ruin? When I first saw this, I started to think, oh my goodness, I wonder what companion means. Because why doesn't it say a man of many friends may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother? At first glance, this does seem to just be a contrast between somebody who knows everybody and somebody who's super popular. Could be something like the difference between an influencer who has a million people who follows their work versus somebody who has one friend who really cares about them, and how much more important it is to have that true friendship than it is for everybody to know who you are. I think that's a decent first glance reading. But I was curious, I'm like, what does this word companion mean? And where else is this word used? So I want to type this into the little search bar here. And again, if you don't have a great tool for Bible study, the Blue Letter Bible works out great. All right, so to his companion who has been his best man. How interesting. So companion is this particular kind of relationship, it seems. Companion is, all right, this is the story when Moses killed somebody. Companion is somebody who works together. This one right here, his brother and his companion and his neighbor. So there's a distinction between brother, companion, and neighbor. Let's go in here because this seems like a useful place to ask the question. What is the word used for companion? And now again, this is quite the passage that we're opening up here. And see how it's translated directly here as friend, H7453. So this is the Strong's reference, and this links English translations, which are, usually they give you some good idea of what it's talking about. I talk pretty much every time I reference this about how they really messed up on the word porneia, given some cultural context. Here, this term for friend, interesting, right? Sometimes it means neighbor, sometimes it means friend. And remember, in this passage we're looking at, there's the neighbor, there's the friend, and there's the brother. This word can mean neighbor, friend, companion, brother. It's only used as companion 5 times in the King James Version. Now, this one is quite interesting to me because I thought when I saw companion, sometimes companion is a euphemism for a lover. And so I'm like, I wonder if this proverb is teaching about some sort of a sexual norm. And let's see where this is translated as lovers. Looks like 3 times. My lovers and my friends stand aloof. My kinsmen stand afar off. This reminds me of Job. What does the word lovers mean? Let's again remember that this is the word for friend. And why is it? Let's, again, rabbit trail or rabbit hole is what they call this, is just start diving in. It has lovers and friends as 2 separate things. And yet we know that this phrase is most often translated as something else. Oh, that is crazy. Look at this. Okay. Huh. I'm curious. So this word to love usually means love, sometimes means friends. And this is the word ahab. 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 So lovers and friends. And remember, we were looking back here for a different word. We were looking for 7453. And I was confused by this because look, it has lovers and 7453, which here is translated as friends. So this is where our index made a little bit of a mistake. So let's look at this. The prophet Jeremiah is writing, "But thou hast played the harlot with many lovers." And I believe this says it's 7453. This is the word that we're looking for. Yet return again. Let's see where this word shows up. If there's a different term used for lovers here, or if this is actually a way of translating it. And now remember again, we're diving down this rabbit hole. Lovers. Lovers. I think we found the one time when this Rhea, this Hebrew word Rhea, is translated as lovers, because the rest of the time it means a neighbor, a friend, another fellow companion. And we're trying to figure out, what are the implications of this word companion? And apparently here in Jeremiah, you have played the harlot with many lovers. It would make sense for it to say companions, like many of the people that you knew, the neighbors, the friends. It doesn't have to be translated lovers in order to make sense there. This one here, again, if we simply say the word companion and friends, it looks like we have lovers and friends showing up in all of these different passages as kind of separate things. Very interesting. All right, so winding our way back, let's see. We'll go down to the Proverbs. We're in Proverbs 18. This is just, I love having these digital search tools. It's so easy to move around and just kind of get some context, because remember, we're looking at this passage through thousands of years of time and totally different cultural context. And so if we want to understand what it means, a man of many companions may come to ruin, but there's a friend who sticks closer than a brother. And now understanding, companions also means friend, sometimes means brother, occasionally means neighbor, and sometimes people translated it lover for whatever reason they did. Doesn't really mean that, so it's probably teaching something about many versus few. And we also have this, they may come to ruin, not necessarily will come to ruin. So the companions were not necessarily the cause of ruin. This is the fun part of Proverbs, is that they're like little equations, little logical arrangements of words and phrases and ideas that you can unpack and unpack and unpack, and they just sort of unfold their meaning for you. So even if you know a lot of people, you may come to ruin. All right. But the friend who sticks closer than a brother will do something to help you and keep you from coming to ruin. And so if I were to say what I see here now, I see this idea of depth of relationship is more valuable than breadth of relationship. And now a lot of us who are in the business world and talking about networking, we know that it's important to form lots of connections. But the number of people you know doesn't necessarily determine your safety net. It's the people who are friends that stick closer than a brother. So people who are like family for you. And I think, some of our culture has picked up on this phrasing where we call people fam or whatever, because we say, you're in a close relationship with me. You're like family. But there are of course other warnings in the Proverbs about a brother, and they say something like a neighbor who is close by is better than a brother who is far away. Oh, look here, an offended brother is more unyielding than a strong city. I had to deal with this reality a couple of months ago. So a man of many companions may come to ruin. I started looking at this in the ESV, right? And I said, let me go look at it in another version and see if it translates companions any different. So I jumped over to the King James Version. And yes, I did cheat a little bit. I did a little study on my own. Usually I try to do these live so I can just unpack my first impressions and be open with the whole process. But I looked at this, and when I pulled up Proverbs chapter 18 in the King James, I was like, where is my verse? I can't find it. Right? Where is this thing about coming to ruin that's down here? Proverbs 18:24 says something totally different. And that was when I realized why I was directed to this passage for today. It was to really uncover this, just how important it is for us to see what we can learn from each of the translations, but also to remember that we're dealing with translated text, and that the translators have their own perspective and framework that they bring to the translation process. So maybe we can ask ourselves the question, what does this passage teach us in the King James translation? Well, this is a great phrase. You must be a friendly person in order to have friends. Incredibly straightforward. I remember learning about this when I was growing up. Somebody taught on this. I don't remember much other than that. There was a teaching. If you want people to like you, you have to be nice to them. And I think I have over on my shelf over there, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And that has a similar phrasing. I suspect it probably even quotes this passage. But what it doesn't do, it probably doesn't go over to the ESV and say, even if you have a lot of friends, you might still come to ruin. And I just noticed something as we came by. Do you see the opening of this passage? 18:1 and 18:24, they're kind of like bookends, talking about relationships with other people. Whoever isolates himself, so somebody who does not have friends or separates from friendship, seeks his own desire, he breaks out against all sound judgment. Now, if we're reading the entire chapter, there's a possibility that this whole chapter is assembled systematically for a reason to emphasize certain things. The people who were the scribes of the ancient times, the people who would compile Proverbs, and I don't remember whether Proverbs 18 is one that is attributed to Solomon or whether it's one of the Egyptian proverbs that came in. But either way, the men of Hezekiah were copying a lot of the Proverbs. These copyists, these scribes, these were the doctors of language and education and religion. This is where the term doctor comes from, is the expert in theology. Now that's in Latin, not Hebrew, of course. So when they're compiling Proverbs, they're not just like, well, let's list them out. Sometimes things are compiled in a poetic order or maybe in alliteration, or something like that. And so it's always helpful to look at the broader context and see, okay, where does chapter 18 fit in the whole? And where does the final verse fit with the rest of the chapter? And it seems I haven't been able to find one central theme running through here. If you see one, definitely let me know. But I just happened to notice this idea of isolation at the beginning and companionship at the end. So let's open the Hebrew and just make our way through. A man, this looks like it is ish, which is, if you remember some of the conversations we've had about Genesis, the word man, mankind, Adam, is different than the word for ish, which is the opposite of isha. So this is the contrast between male and female. This is, of course, speaking to men, and so it's using this word. Friends, a man of too many. Wow. So it looks like this direct translation is actually contradicting my earlier thought where I was like, it doesn't look like the friends caused the ruin. Here, this direct translation, the one with too many friends, to ruin. Almost like having too many friends is a problem. But there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. Let's just dive into this for a second, because why did they put of too many in here? Is this just something they put up? Okay. Yeah, this isn't linked to the word friends per se. Masculine plural, absolute. So wherever this came from, it doesn't seem to be coming from the Hebrew. So if we were to read direct, a man, friends, to ruin. And who does the ruin apply to? This is my next area of linguistic growth, is trying to figure out this. So like preposition, infinitive construct, to ruin. Who is ruin? Who does the word to ruin apply to? Does it apply to the friends? Does it apply to the man? Does it apply to this of too many idea? So very interesting. I don't feel like I'm getting any deeper here. Let me just run across and do a, here's this, not that, interlinear Bibles. King James again, New King James, they stick with it. Look, consistency. NLT. Do you see all the different ways that Bible translators will bring their perspective to a single verse? And you see why it's so easy to do is because when we were back here, all we have is a man, friends, to ruin. What does that phrase mean? And the way that we decide what it means ultimately determines what we end up reading in English. There are friends who destroy each other. See, remember we asked the question, who does ruin apply to? Friends destroy each other. I mean, I don't like this one very much. One who has unreliable friends soon comes to ruin. Whoever wrote the NIV was thinking similar to me when I read the KJV. A man of many companions may come to ruin. One with many friends may be harmed. It's interesting that the last section, there's a friend who sticks closer than a brother. That seems to be the reliable part of the translation, like ASV. The one who makes many friends does it to his own destruction. I mean, straight on to the point. Having too many friends is a bad idea. Yeah, but there is a friend that sticks closer than a brother. And if we're going to just take from this what I'm sensing from this read, if there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother, there is a possibility. And now I have great brothers. I love my brothers. They're really wonderful. And we're pretty close. But there's a friend that is closer than a brother. Wow. Now, let me see. I will tell you about this. It's something you can go look up if you want to. But when Adam looks at Eve in the creation story and sees her, he says, "This is me. This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." And we have that phrase today when we say somebody is our flesh and blood. And so for somebody to be closer than that, David uses that term about his cousins. So it's a familial relationship. We have the same blood in our veins. We have the same body. This is quite a phrase for someone to be closer than that. And just to think that this is a possibility in life, to have a friend who's closer than a brother, I think that must be an incredible gift. To cleave, to join, to stick. Let's see where these passages come in. This reminds me of, okay, this is just being very close. This isn't the one cleave unto his wife passage. But again, that's in English. Sometimes we have connections between one word and another. Joining, stick closer, to be together. There is a kind of friendship that is closer than brotherhood. How about that? It's quite the thing to take away from this passage. And I think that's about all I've got. But part of the reason why I was brought to this passage today was simply to look at this. It's not really an issue of translation, it's just a reality of translation. It's not necessarily bad, it's not necessarily good, it can be helpful, and it can also be confusing. But it gets in the way of our Western academic orientation to have one right answer. Because especially when it comes to languages like Hebrew, there is no such thing as the one right answer. And when it comes to a proverb specifically, there are supposed to be many different answers, many things you can learn as you meditate on the proverb, as you dig in and study it, like we did today, but more importantly, as you simply let it turn over and over in your mind. And think about, what does it mean for your life? Because being able to explain the text is not quite so important as being able to live it out. Well, that's all for today. If you want to join me on one of these studies, send me a message, let me know. If you have a particular passage you want to unpack together, that would be a lot of fun. I've done it with a couple of people, and I haven't actually posted any of them. I will have to share some. But do be in touch. I'm always happy to carry on the conversation. If you want to connect with me personally or see more of my work, you can find me online at drkevinjensen.com. Cheers.